The humble farmer Edwin Carver, having amassed considerable wealth, decides to purchase a premium car at an upscale dealership. His appearance triggers ridicule and mistrust, yet he confidently proves his worth through action. Edwin pays in cash, shocking the dealership and forcing the staff to reassess their prejudices. This act becomes the catalyst for a massive transformation. Merging traditional farming methods with modern technology, Edwin's success attracts attention and inspires the adoption of innovative and sustainable practices in the industry. He establishes a network of independent service centers, challenging established corporate structures. Edwin unites the local community, becoming a symbol of change and a role model for others. He successfully fends off sabotage and corporate intrigue, defending his business empire and ethical practices. His journey becomes an inspiring example of how courage and perseverance can shatter stereotypes and change the world. This story is a dynamic blend of struggle, innovation, and success that continues to open new horizons. In a modest town tucked between rolling hills and vast fields of golden grain, a humble farmer named Edwin Carver had spent decades tending to his land and building his modest fortune through sheer perseverance and unwavering dedication. Born into a family where calloused hands and weathered faces were the daily testament of hard work, Edwin had long learned that respect was earned by toil and determination rather than by appearances or titles. Over the years, the fruits of his labor had gradually transformed his small, ancestral farm into a thriving enterprise, one that not only fed the local community but also supplied produce to distant markets. Despite his humble beginnings, Edwin's wisdom and persistence had allowed him to accumulate enough wealth to dream beyond the furrows of his fields, a dream that, until now, had taken the shape of a sleek, premium automobile. On an unseasonably cool autumn morning, Edwin drove his time-worn pickup, a battered, but reliable companion that had seen him through countless harvests and storms, toward the city's most prestigious car dealership. The dealership, renowned for its gleaming showrooms and a fleet of vehicles that whispered of luxury and high performance, stood as a monument to modern affluence. Its glass facade reflected the deep blue of the sky and the immaculate lawns tended by expert gardeners. Edwin's arrival in his pickup, an incongruous sight amidst the polished opulence, immediately set off a series of snickers and whispered judgments among the well-dressed staff and prospective buyers milling about in the showroom. Edwin's presence, marked by a simple denim shirt and faded work trousers, contrasted sharply with the designer suits and pristine attire of the dealership's clientele. As he walked through the revolving doors, his gait was measured and resolute, a quiet confidence born of years of overcoming hardships and societal prejudices. Every step he took was an assertion of his right to aspire and to claim his share of the luxuries that many believed were reserved only for those of refined pedigree. His mind, however, was not clouded by vanity. It was focused on practicality and the promise of progress. He had chosen this day to purchase a premium vehicle not for ostentation but because, in his eyes, the car represented the next step in modernizing his business operations, a tool to bridge the gap between his robust rural roots and the sophisticated world of commerce that he had gradually come to influence. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was as cold as the marble floors that gleamed under the chandelier's light. The staff, accustomed to serving a clientele of polished executives and affluent socialites, regarded Edwin with a mixture of bemusement and condescension. Their eyes, trained to assess status based on attire and demeanor, were quick to judge his worn-out boots and the simple lines of his weathered face. Whispers traveled behind polite smiles, some snickered openly while others exchanged knowing glances that spoke of assumptions based solely on his outward appearance. Yet, Edwin's focus remained unshaken. He had spent a lifetime proving that substance far outweighed superficiality, and he was determined that today would be no different. As Edwin approached the counter, where a receptionist in a crisply tailored blazer scanned a set of documents with barely concealed impatience, the contrast between him and his surroundings could not have been starker. The receptionist's eyes flicked up momentarily, not with genuine interest but with an unspoken question. Who is this man, and why would he be here? Without a word, Edwin placed his meticulously prepared portfolio on the counter. It contained detailed accounts of his business ventures, financial statements that spoke of years of prudent investment, and strategic plans that hinted at the vast potential his agricultural enterprise still harbored. Every page was a testament to his journey from humble beginnings to a position of quiet power. Though his voice was rarely raised in defiance, his actions today were a clear declaration that he was no mere farmer, he was an entrepreneur whose wisdom had been honed in the crucible of everyday struggle. The dealership manager, a man named Gregory Leland, a figure known for his impeccable manners and refined tastes, stepped forward to greet Edwin. Gregory's polite smile, however, did little to mask the underlying skepticism that had colored his initial assessment. He carefully examined Edwin's credentials, his eyes lingering on the modest photographs of sprawling farmlands and the handwritten notes of field observations that, in his view, seemed far removed from the world of luxury automobiles. In that moment, a silent battle of perceptions began, one where the values of hard work, perseverance, and practical wisdom were set against the glittering allure of status symbols and designer labels. Edwin's calm, unassuming presence contrasted sharply with the ostentatious displays of wealth around him, and it was this very contrast that would come to define the unfolding drama. For several moments, the air in the showroom seemed to thicken with tension as Gregory and his colleagues exchanged glances and measured Edwin with subtle, dismissive nods. The conversation, held in murmured tones behind polished reception desks, was not one of overt hostility but of quiet incredulity. How could a man who drove an old pickup and wore clothes that bore the marks of labor possibly possess the acumen to navigate the high-stakes world of luxury car investments? Yet, beneath the veneer of derision lay an unspoken acknowledgement that Edwin's portfolio was formidable. Each document, each graph, and every meticulously recorded statistic told a story of success achieved through unwavering determination and a keen understanding of the market forces that govern both the rural and urban economies. Even as the dealership staff's skepticism reached a crescendo, Edwin remained a pillar of quiet determination. He moved through the showroom with a measured dignity that seemed to defy the casual cruelty of the world around him. Every step he took was a silent lesson in humility and self-respect, a demonstration that true worth was not dictated by external trappings but by the strength of one's character and the wisdom gleaned from years of experience. In that polished environment of chrome and leather, where every surface gleamed with the promise of high-class indulgence, Edwin was an anomaly, a man whose journey had been etched not in glittering boardrooms but in the soil of his beloved farm. As the morning wore on and the dealership staff continued to scrutinize the farmer's every move, a subtle shift began to take place. Edwin's quiet confidence and the undeniable evidence of his success started to chip away at the entrenched prejudices that had initially colored their perception. There was a moment, fleeting yet significant, when the dismissive glances gave way to a grudging recognition that perhaps the world of wealth and refinement was not exclusively the domain of those who looked the part. Instead, it was a realm where hard-earned wisdom and the resilience of the human spirit could, in time, forge their own kind of prestige. And so, with a steady resolve born of decades spent in the fields, Edwin began to navigate the labyrinth of luxury with a calm assurance that promised to upend every expectation set before him. In that charged atmosphere, where every whispered comment and sidelong glance was a reminder of the barriers he was determined to break, Edwin's journey toward acquiring the premium car became more than just a transaction. It was a bold statement, a testament to the idea that true success was measured not by the superficial trappings of wealth but by the transformative power of hard work, intellect, and the relentless will to improve one's station in life. The dealership, with its dazzling displays of wealth and sophistication, would soon learn that beneath the humble exterior of a farmer lay a mind sharpened by years of adversity and a heart tempered by the relentless pursuit of excellence. As the initial phase of this encounter drew to a close, the stage was set for a confrontation of expectations, a meeting of worlds as disparate as the vast fields of his farm and the manicured perfection of the urban luxury market. Edwin's journey had only just begun, and the challenges he was about to face would not only test his resolve but also serve as a catalyst for a transformation that would ripple through both his business ventures and the preconceived notions of those who had underestimated him. In that moment of silent defiance, with the weight of his past and the promise of his future intermingling in the polished corridors of the dealership, Edwin Carver's determination shone like a beacon, a quiet, unwavering light that would soon dispel the shadows of prejudice and pave the way for an unexpected revolution in the world of commerce. As Edwin stood in the heart of the dealership, surrounded by vehicles that gleamed under the showroom's curated lighting, he was keenly aware of the eyes upon him. Some were curious, others entertained, but most carried the same unspoken assumption: that he did not belong. The dealership employees continued their quiet conversations, some stealing glances at the old farmer who had entered their realm of exclusivity. The whispered judgments were not new to Edwin, he had faced them before, from bankers who doubted his creditworthiness to landowners who underestimated his strategic mind. This was just another variation of the same lesson he had spent a lifetime mastering. Appearances deceived, but results did not. Gregory Leland, still skeptical but now bound by professional obligation, stepped forward with the calculated charm of a seasoned salesman. His movements were measured, his words chosen with care, but the subtext of his demeanor was clear. He was indulging Edwin, not taking him seriously. He gestured toward one of the dealership's premier offerings, a high-performance luxury SUV with an imposing grille, a sculpted body, and a six-figure price tag that ensured only the elite could claim ownership. Edwin listened as Gregory recited specifications and features, each detail delivered with a rehearsed enthusiasm meant to impress. The vehicle boasted advanced climate-controlled leather seats, a state-of-the-art suspension system, and an interior outfitted with technology that promised both convenience and indulgence. Yet, as Edwin listened, his thoughts were elsewhere. He wasn't here to be dazzled by marketing jargon or persuaded by the illusion of status. He had built his business by investing in practicality, reliability, and efficiency. If this vehicle met his needs, it would be his, whether or not the men in tailored suits approved. Gregory, however, had yet to grasp that fact. The salesman's confidence remained intact as he guided Edwin toward the SUV, but his underlying skepticism showed in the way he hesitated before offering the keys for a test drive. It was a moment of hesitation so brief that an untrained observer might have missed it, but Edwin caught it instantly. It was the same hesitation he had seen from bankers reluctant to grant him a loan, the same pause in an auctioneer's voice when he outbid city investors for a prime piece of farmland. It was the conditioned reflex of those who saw only the surface and failed to understand the depth beneath. Edwin reached out, took the keys without a word, and settled into the driver's seat with a quiet ease that suggested he had already made up his mind. He ran his fingers over the finely stitched leather, tested the weight of the steering wheel, and examined the digital dashboard with the analytical precision of a man who understood machinery in a way no salesman ever could. To him, every component was a tool, no different from the heavy-duty equipment he used on his farm. The only question that mattered was whether this machine would serve his purposes efficiently. The test drive was met with restrained amusement from the dealership staff. Several employees had discreetly positioned themselves near the showroom windows, watching with bemused anticipation. Edwin, unfazed by the silent mockery, drove with the same steady patience that had guided him through countless harvests. He tested the acceleration not for thrill but for practicality, gauging how it handled sharp turns and sudden stops, assessing the vehicle's responsiveness in a way that only a man accustomed to working with powerful machines could appreciate. When he returned to the lot, he stepped out of the SUV without comment, leaving the keys in Gregory's expectant hands. The dealership manager, still under the impression that the test drive had merely been a passing curiosity, began his closing pitch with an air of polite detachment. He spoke of financing options, of leasing plans tailored for clients who wished to maintain liquidity. The unspoken assumption was clear. He believed Edwin was here to fantasize, not to purchase. Then Edwin calmly placed a thick envelope of certified cashier's checks on the counter. The room fell silent. The casual amusement that had followed him throughout the dealership evaporated in an instant. The receptionist who had barely looked at him before now straightened in her seat, eyes darting toward the envelope as if uncertain whether she had misjudged the entire encounter. Gregory, momentarily thrown off balance, hesitated before reaching for the documents. His hands, which had been so steady in their practiced gestures moments ago, now betrayed a subtle stiffness. The numbers were indisputable. The sum matched the full purchase price of the vehicle, with additional funds set aside for immediate custom modifications. Edwin was not requesting financing, nor was he interested in negotiating a better deal. He had come prepared to make his purchase outright, in cash, as a man who knew the value of his money and the worth of his decisions. Gregory cleared his throat, the confidence in his voice now tinged with something else, an unease that came from realizing he had grossly underestimated the man before him. the staff who had watched with thinly veiled amusement were now exchanging uncertain glances, the laughter from earlier now a distant memory. Edwin let the silence linger for a moment longer before finally breaking it, not with arrogance, but with the same quiet resolve that had carried him through a lifetime of challenges. He explained, in measured tones, that his purchase was not driven by vanity but by necessity. The vehicle would allow him to expand his business operations, to reach clients in distant markets, to transport high-value agricultural samples to prospective buyers in urban centers without relying on third-party logistics. It was, like every investment he had ever made, a strategic decision based on foresight and pragmatism. Gregory listened, nodding in mechanical agreement, but there was no mistaking the shift in his demeanor. The farmer he had once dismissed as an anomaly was now the most important client in the showroom. The envelope on the counter was proof enough of that. As the final paperwork was prepared, Edwin noticed the subtle change in the staff's behavior. Where once there had been condescension, there was now an eager attentiveness. The same employees who had barely acknowledged him before were now offering coffee, discussing warranty options, and presenting VIP service packages. The receptionist who had glanced over him dismissively was now speaking in a tone of carefully measured respect. Edwin, however, was unmoved by the sudden shift. He had encountered it before, this calculated deference that only emerged when wealth was proven. It was the same with banks, with investors, with suppliers who once questioned whether a farmer's handshake was as good as a lawyer's contract. He had long since learned that respect earned through money alone was fleeting. When the final signature was penned, and the keys to the SUV were officially handed over, Edwin took them with the same steady calm he had carried through the entire transaction. He knew the lesson had been learned, though not the one the dealership had intended to teach. He turned toward the exit, walking past the showroom's polished surfaces and extravagant displays, past the hushed whispers of employees who now saw him in a different light. As he stepped into the afternoon sun, a satisfied nod was all he offered before climbing back into his old pickup, the vehicle that had carried him through years of labor and success. The luxury SUV would serve its purpose, but Edwin himself remained unchanged. He had won, not by seeking validation, but by proving, once again, that a man's worth was not measured by the fabric of his clothing or the smoothness of his hands, but by the depth of his knowledge and the strength of his will. The dealership would remember him, and in time, they would come to him, not just as a buyer, but as a man who had shown them the truth about wealth and power. But that part of the story had yet to unfold. In the weeks following the surprising transaction at the dealership, the echoes of Edwin Carver's quiet victory began to ripple outward, touching realms he had never before contemplated. The luxury automobile he had so decisively acquired was more than a mere machine. It was a symbol, a turning point that signaled the beginning of a new chapter in both his life and in the perceptions of those who had once looked down upon him. As word of the transaction spread among the circles of high finance and refined tastes, whispers of admiration, disbelief, and even envy began to circulate. Edwin's unpretentious yet resolute display of financial authority had challenged the established hierarchy, and it would not be long before its ramifications were felt far beyond the polished floors of that ostentatious dealership. After the deal, Edwin returned to his expansive farm, a sprawling mosaic of tilled fields and verdant pastures that had grown in tandem with his reputation as a diligent cultivator of both crops and character. Each morning, as the sun broke over the horizon and bathed his lands in golden light, he would walk among his fields with a reflective air, a silent acknowledgement of the journey that had brought him here. The land, which had long served as both his livelihood and his mentor, seemed to echo the same timeless lesson he had internalized, that true strength was nurtured by the soil of experience and the steady perseverance that transforms hardship into opportunity. Yet, even as Edwin resumed the familiar rhythm of tending to his fields and overseeing the daily operations of his agricultural enterprise, the memory of that fateful day at the dealership lingered like an ember in the depths of his mind. The dismissive sneers and the condescending glances had faded, replaced by a cautious curiosity whenever his name was mentioned in circles that had once ridiculed him. As his farm continued to prosper, expanding its boundaries, incorporating modern techniques alongside traditional practices, and branching into new markets, Edwin found himself at a crossroads where the old world and the new were converging in unexpected ways. The luxury car, now a fixture in his modest garage alongside his old pickup, served as a daily reminder of his triumph over prejudice. It was not merely an object of status, but rather an instrument that allowed him to bridge the gap between the rustic charm of his upbringing and the sophisticated demands of a rapidly evolving market. The vehicle's sleek lines and powerful engine became symbols of the adaptability and innovation that had come to define his business philosophy. He began using the car not only as a means of transportation but as a mobile office, a place where he could review market trends, plan logistics, and forge new partnerships as he drove between his various holdings. As the seasons changed, so too did the fortunes of Edwin's enterprise. His decision to modernize his operations, which had once been met with skepticism by traditionalists in the agricultural community, now bore fruit in the form of lucrative contracts and expanding market share. Buyers from far-flung urban centers, intrigued by the idea of a farm that combined time-honored practices with cutting-edge technology, sought out his produce with a fervor that defied expectations. The once modest farm now operated on a scale that rivaled some of the larger conglomerates in the region, and Edwin's reputation as a forward-thinking innovator began to solidify. In boardrooms and conference halls, where polished executives deliberated over mergers and acquisitions, the tale of the humble farmer who had dared to challenge societal norms was recounted with a mix of incredulity and admiration. Industry insiders marveled at the efficiency of his integrated supply chain, a network that seamlessly connected the rustic origins of his produce with the demanding tastes of upscale consumers. The success of his model not only transformed the agricultural landscape, but also disrupted the established order in sectors that had long been considered impermeable to the influence of a man from the countryside. Meanwhile, at the once impenetrable car dealership, the transformation that Edwin had unwittingly set in motion began to take shape. The management, which had previously scoffed at the notion of a farmer engaging in high-stakes financial dealings, found themselves re-evaluating their customer base and the rigid preconceptions that had long governed their operations. Invitations began to arrive from affluent collectors and industry moguls who were eager to have their vehicles serviced, modified, or even sold by the very dealership that had once belittled Edwin. A subtle yet undeniable shift was occurring, a recognition that the lines between high culture and humble origins were far more blurred than they had ever imagined. Despite this newfound interest from the elite, Edwin remained as steadfast as ever in his approach. His dealings with the dealership, which had evolved from a one-sided transaction into a series of careful negotiations, were marked by a disarming blend of practicality and measured authority. Rather than accepting their offers with a sense of entitlement, he treated each encounter as an opportunity to reaffirm his own standards and priorities. It was not long before the roles began to reverse. The once condescending salesmen now found themselves bending to the will of the farmer whose wisdom and fortitude had proven to be far more substantial than their shallow judgments had ever allowed. In one notable instance, as a result of his expanding business ventures, Edwin was invited back to the dealership, not as a customer in need of a new vehicle, but as a consultant sought to advise on the redesign of their service protocols. The invitation was wrapped in layers of polite deference, yet beneath it lay the unmistakable acknowledgement that the dealership had much to learn from the man who had transformed a simple act of purchasing into a lesson in resilience and strategic thinking. Edwin accepted the invitation not for personal gain, but because he recognized the broader potential of influencing an industry that had long operated on outdated assumptions. In the quiet, sunlit conference room of the dealership, he meticulously outlined his vision for a service model that prioritized transparency, efficiency, and, above all, a deep respect for the customer's intrinsic worth. As his words resonated within the polished walls, those who had once derided him found themselves grappling with a humbling reality, that success was not confined to the conventional markers of wealth and refinement. Instead, it was forged in the crucible of everyday struggle, nurtured by the commitment to progress and grounded in the enduring values of honesty and hard work. The transformation was subtle yet profound, a gradual dismantling of the rigid hierarchies that had long defined the boundaries between rural earnestness and urban sophistication. Edwin's influence extended beyond the immediate transaction. It served as a clarion call to a generation of entrepreneurs who had been marginalized by the prevailing dogmas of their time. In the days that followed, as the dealership began to reconfigure its approach, Edwin found solace in the familiarity of his routine. He continued to rise with the dawn, traversing the vast expanse of his farm with a quiet determination that had become his hallmark. Each visit to the fields was a reaffirmation of the values that had carried him through countless seasons of hardship and prosperity alike. The interplay of modern machinery and traditional farming practices, so seamlessly integrated in his operations, served as a living testament to the potential for innovation when one is unafraid to embrace change. Yet, as his business flourished and the boundaries of his influence expanded, a subtle tension began to emerge. The dealership, now reeling from its own transformation, was not content to merely accept its role as a follower in this new paradigm. Ambitious executives within its ranks started to devise strategies aimed at regaining the upper hand, to reassert a form of authority that had once been taken for granted. They initiated a series of covert maneuvers designed to lure Edwin back into a position of dependency, a position in which the dealership's traditional expertise could once again dominate the narrative. Rumors circulated of exclusive maintenance contracts, preferential financing packages, and even bespoke vehicle modifications that promised to enhance the performance of his prized automobile. But for Edwin, such overtures were little more than thinly veiled attempts to regain lost prestige. With the same measured calm that had carried him through every challenge in the past, Edwin regarded these developments with a discerning eye. He recognized that the dealership's overtures were not born of genuine admiration or a desire to collaborate. Rather, they were manifestations of an ingrained need to reassert control in an environment that had been upended by his very presence. Drawing upon the reservoir of wisdom amassed over decades of hard labor and shrewd observation, he methodically evaluated each proposal, dissecting its merits and uncovering the underlying motivations that lay hidden beneath layers of corporate politeness. His decisions were not driven by impulse but by a keen sense of long-term strategy, a belief that true power lay in the ability to adapt and innovate, rather than in clinging to obsolete traditions. In the quiet moments of reflection that followed each meeting and negotiation, Edwin would often return to the core lessons of his youth. The fields that had nurtured his growth were a constant reminder that the cycles of nature were as much about renewal as they were about persistence. Just as the seasons shifted and transformed the landscape, so too did the tides of fortune in the world of commerce. It was this cyclical nature of life that gave him the strength to withstand the subtle pressures of conformity, to remain resolute in the face of overtures that sought to tether him to a past he had long outgrown. As the dealership's attempts to reassert its influence grew more determined, Edwin's responses became increasingly ingenious. Rather than accepting their proposals or allowing himself to be drawn into a power struggle, he opted instead for a series of strategic collaborations that reinforced his autonomy. He engaged with a network of independent mechanics and tech experts, creating a bespoke maintenance and modification program that was tailored to the precise needs of his vehicle, and, by extension, his business. This initiative not only ensured that his automobile remained in peak condition, but it also sent a clear message to the dealership, that his operations were underpinned by a sophisticated and self-sufficient support system, rendering external dependency a relic of the past. The ripple effects of Edwin's actions were felt far and wide. News of the ingenious workaround reached not only the local business community but also garnered attention from regional and national media. The story of the farmer who had defied convention and turned a simple car purchase into a masterclass in strategic independence resonated with audiences who saw in him a mirror of their own struggles against an establishment that valued appearance over substance. As his story unfolded in newspapers, on television, and across digital platforms, Edwin remained steadfast in his commitment to progress, quietly aware that the true measure of success was not the accolades of the powerful but the transformative impact of one's actions on the lives of others. In this way, as the dealership recalibrated its approach and the world around him continued to shift, Edwin Carver emerged not only as a symbol of personal triumph but also as an embodiment of a broader movement, a call to action for all those who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or cast aside by a society that prized superficial markers of worth above the enduring qualities of hard work, wisdom, and integrity. His journey was far from over, and while the forces of convention would continue to push against the boundaries of his achievements, his resolute spirit and unwavering determination would guide him forward, lighting the way for future generations of innovators and dreamers alike. In the months following Edwin Carver's decisive demonstrations of independence and strategic insight, the reverberations of his actions began to echo even more profoundly throughout the business community and beyond, as the seasons turned and the countryside shifted from the amber glow of autumn to the crisp chill of winter. Edwin found himself at a pivotal juncture. A moment where the forces of tradition and the winds of change converged in a dynamic struggle for relevance and power. The once dismissive executives at the luxury dealership, now forced to acknowledge the ingenuity of the farmer-turned-entrepreneur, initiated a series of new maneuvers designed to undermine his growing influence, yet, with every stratagem devised by his former detractors, Edwin responded with a blend of measured resolve and inventive foresight that further cemented his reputation as a man who refused to be defined by the narrow confines of societal expectation. In the early days of winter, when frost still clung to the edges of the sprawling fields on his estate, Edwin convened meetings with a cadre of trusted advisors, local innovators, seasoned mechanics, and sharp-witted financial strategists. These gatherings, held in the warm, candlelit rooms of a refurbished barn that had been transformed into an informal boardroom, became the crucible for ideas that would further revolutionize his operations. They discussed how technology could be seamlessly integrated with time-honored agricultural practices, exploring innovative ways to enhance yield, optimize logistics, and, most crucially, maintain the independence that Edwin so valued. While the dealership's leadership remained preoccupied with regaining their lost stature, Edwin's circle focused on developing cutting-edge modifications for his premium automobile. They explored custom telemetry systems, real-time diagnostics, and even environmentally sustainable enhancements that would not only extend the life of his vehicle but also signal a commitment to the broader ideals of progress and responsibility. Word of these innovations soon traveled beyond the confines of the local community. Regional media outlets, once skeptical of the farmer's grand ambitions, began to tell the story of the man who had turned adversity into opportunity. Articles appeared in business journals and agricultural magazines alike, describing Edwin's unique synthesis of modern technology and traditional farming. Reporters marveled at his ability to transform a single car purchase, an act that had once been ridiculed, into the foundation for a multifaceted enterprise that bridged the worlds of rural labor and urban sophistication. In televised interviews and print features, Edwin's measured responses resonated with audiences who saw in him a personification of the untapped potential that lay hidden within the overlooked corners of society. His demeanor was never boastful; instead, it was marked by an unassuming certainty that spoke of countless seasons of hard work and quiet triumphs. Meanwhile, within the gleaming confines of the dealership, the mood was shifting from haughty dismissal to anxious recalibration. The boardroom meetings held by the dealership's upper management were now dominated by heated debates about how to capture a segment of the market that had once been considered alien to their purview. Some executives proposed launching a new line of vehicles marketed explicitly to the rugged, working class, a misguided attempt to appropriate Edwin's success without understanding its true roots. Others, more cautious and self-reflective, suggested that the dealership should invest in retraining its staff and overhauling its service protocols to become more inclusive and responsive to a diverse clientele. In private, a faction of younger managers, inspired by the farmer's achievements, quietly pushed for strategic partnerships with local innovators and independent mechanics. These internal divisions underscored a deeper crisis, the recognition that the rigid models of success and customer service that had once defined the dealership were now obsolete in the face of a rapidly evolving market. As Edwin's influence expanded, his every move became a lesson in the art of quiet revolution. On a particularly brisk winter morning, as snow dusted the fields in a delicate white blanket, Edwin embarked on a journey that symbolized the convergence of his agricultural legacy and his modern ambitions. He traveled to a regional technology symposium, a gathering that brought together luminaries from various industries, from agricultural innovators to digital entrepreneurs. Despite his humble origins and the unassuming appearance that belied his true acumen, Edwin was greeted with respectful curiosity by the attendees. His presence challenged preconceived notions of what a successful business leader should look like, and his thoughtful insights during panel discussions were met with nods of approval and genuine interest. During one session, experts debated the role of sustainability in modern enterprise, and Edwin's remarks resonated deeply with the audience. he recounted the lessons learned from long winters and bountiful summers, drawing parallels between the cyclical nature of farming and the strategic cycles of business. His words were laced with metaphors drawn from the natural world, a reminder that innovation need not discard tradition, but rather, it could be its most potent catalyst. In that moment, Edwin emerged not merely as an entrepreneur but as a visionary who saw the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate worlds. His balanced perspective, rooted in decades of experience, inspired those in attendance to reconsider their assumptions about progress, success, and the role of heritage in shaping the future. Back at his expansive estate, as the digital clocks in the modest yet modern control center ticked away in harmony with the rhythms of nature outside, Edwin's strategic plans for the coming year began to take shape. He envisioned a new phase of expansion, a project that would see his enterprise branching into complementary industries such as renewable energy and advanced agrotechnology. The premium automobile, which had once been a symbol of defiance, was now poised to serve as a mobile command center, connecting the remote corners of his growing empire with the centralized hub of innovation he was creating. This vision extended beyond personal success. It was a blueprint for uplifting a community that had long been marginalized by outdated perceptions and economic stagnation. Despite the mounting accolades and the gradual softening of erstwhile adversaries, not all were prepared to accept the shifting order. A faction within the dealership, feeling increasingly alienated by the changes and the loss of their traditional power base, began to orchestrate subtle sabotage. Rumors began to circulate of clandestine meetings aimed at undermining Edwin's new initiatives, and anonymous memos hinted at plans to disrupt his supply chain by leveraging long-standing relationships with certain logistics partners. These machinations, however, were met with a calm vigilance on Edwin's part. Far from being caught off guard, he had anticipated such resistance and had already diversified his network to include a wide array of independent contractors and regional cooperatives. His foresight ensured that any attempt to disrupt his operations would be met with swift and effective countermeasures, reinforcing his reputation as a leader who was always several steps ahead of his detractors. In one particularly dramatic incident, as the first signs of spring began to melt the winter's chill from the land, Edwin received notice that a critical shipment of perishable produce was being deliberately delayed by a longtime partner with ties to the dealership. The disruption threatened to compromise a series of lucrative contracts with high-end urban restaurants, a situation that could have damaged the credibility of his burgeoning enterprise. Yet, with the steady composure that had become his trademark, Edwin convened an emergency meeting with his logistics team. Over the course of a long, strategy-laden discussion in a refurbished barn office, he outlined a series of contingency plans that not only ensured the timely delivery of the goods but also exposed the saboteurs' interference to the broader business community. Within days, the news broke that Edwin's operation had navigated the crisis with exemplary efficiency, and the incident served as a clarion call to others who had been hesitant to challenge entrenched interests. As spring fully blossomed across the countryside, bringing with it a renewal of life and opportunity, Edwin's empire continued to flourish. The integrated systems he had developed, a harmonious blend of cutting-edge technology, sustainable practices, and traditional agricultural wisdom, began to attract international attention. Delegations from overseas, curious to witness firsthand the transformation of a modest farm into a paragon of modern enterprise, began to visit his estate. These delegations marveled not only at the physical transformation of the land but also at the way in which Edwin's journey encapsulated the spirit of innovation born of adversity. In each conversation, he remained resolutely humble, attributing his success to the collective efforts of a community that had embraced change rather than shunned it. Yet, amidst the accolades and the growing network of partners, there lingered an awareness that the battle for true respect and autonomy was far from over. The luxury dealership, though outwardly softened by the inevitability of change, still harbored remnants of a mentality that Edwin had long outgrown. As invitations to consult on further modifications and redesigns began to flow in, he weighed each opportunity with the discerning caution of a man who knew that every concession could be a potential setback. Instead of capitulating to offers that would rebind him to an old order, he forged new alliances with independent innovators and technologists, partners who shared his vision of an industry defined not by exclusivity or arrogance but by the shared pursuit of excellence and progress. Through every challenge and triumph, Edwin Carver's journey continued to serve as a powerful reminder that the truest measure of success lies not in the superficial markers of wealth, but in the unwavering commitment to one's principles, the courage to innovate in the face of adversity, and the enduring power of integrity. As the land around him awakened to the promise of a new season, so too did the hearts and minds of those who had once doubted him, his story, unfolding like the gentle yet inexorable turning of the seasons, resonated deeply with all who believed that a single act of quiet defiance could indeed alter the course of an entire industry. And so, as Edwin walked along the freshly plowed fields under a sky streaked with the soft hues of dawn, his gaze was fixed not on the challenges that lay behind him but on the boundless possibilities ahead, a future where innovation, hard work, and unyielding determination would continue to reshape the very fabric of society. In that moment, the legacy of a humble farmer had grown into a beacon of hope and a testament to the transformative power of perseverance, a legacy that would continue to inspire and empower long after the final frost had melted away. As the warmth of summer slowly unfurled its golden light over the vast expanse of Edwin Carver's lands, the rhythm of his life grew ever more entwined with the pulse of change that had been steadily transforming not only his own destiny but also the broader landscape of commerce and industry. In these unfolding days, when the fields were awash with the vibrant hues of ripening crops and the air carried the promise of new beginnings, Edwin found himself at the heart of an evolving revolution, one that was redefining what it meant to be both a custodian of tradition and an agent of innovation. His once modest operation, born of perseverance and sheer grit, had expanded into a multifaceted enterprise that now embraced not only agriculture and technology but also elements of renewable energy, logistics, optimization, and sustainable business practices. Each facet of this growing empire bore the unmistakable imprint of his pragmatic wisdom, a testament to a lifetime of overcoming obstacles with quiet determination. Within the serene confines of his sprawling estate, Edwin dedicated long hours to the meticulous study of emerging trends and technologies. His daily routine, which began with the soft prelude of a dawn chorus and concluded with the tranquil hues of twilight, was punctuated by visits to newly established research facilities and innovation hubs that dotted the rural landscape. Here, in the company of like-minded individuals, engineers, agronomists, and forward-thinking entrepreneurs, Edwin would pore over data and blueprints, evaluating proposals for next-generation machinery that could further streamline his operations. This collaborative spirit, nurtured over years of solitary struggle and eventual triumph, now radiated outward like ripples across a quiet pond, drawing others into a movement that transcended the narrow boundaries of industry. At the same time, the reverberations of Edwin's success continued to unsettle the state hierarchy of the luxury dealership that had once attempted to belittle him. Within the opulent walls of that institution, long accustomed to the unchallenged dominance of convention, an undercurrent of anxiety began to spread among the ranks of executives and sales staff. The dealership's leadership, once so certain of their market supremacy, now found themselves grappling with the realization that their traditional methods were increasingly out of step with a world that had been redefined by Edwin's relentless ingenuity. The familiar cadence of boardroom deliberations took on a desperate tone as strategies were hastily reconfigured, new marketing campaigns conceived in an effort to recapture a clientele that had become more discerning and diverse. Yet, with every feeble attempt to restore the old order, the chasm between the dealership's antiquated approach and the dynamic, forward-looking vision represented by Edwin's operations widened ever further. Unbeknownst to the dealership's inner circle, Edwin had long been laying the groundwork for an initiative that would irrevocably alter the balance of power in the region, deeply aware that true progress was not achieved by merely reacting to the schemes of detractors. He had forged a network of independent service centers and technical support teams that spanned a broad geographic area. This decentralized network was built on the principles of autonomy and excellence, designed to offer the kind of specialized attention and cutting-edge modifications that the dealership had once prided itself on. In crafting this network, Edwin not only secured his own operations against any future attempts at interference, but he also set a new standard for customer service in a market that had long been dominated by elitist pretensions. The independent centers, each managed by local experts who shared his commitment to quality and innovation, became a testament to the power of collective expertise. A living embodiment of the philosophy that true strength lies in collaboration rather than in hierarchical control. In the midst of these transformative efforts, Edwin found time to revisit the legacy of his humble origins. On quiet evenings, when the long shadows of dusk stretched languidly across his fields, he would walk along the familiar dirt paths that had once guided him through seasons of hardship and hope. These reflective moments served as a reminder that his journey, though marked by spectacular achievements, had always been rooted in the simple yet profound truths of perseverance, honesty, and a deep respect for the land. It was during these solitary walks that he conceived many of the ideas that would later become integral to his new initiatives, ideas that combined the practical wisdom of farming with the innovative spirit of modern technology. In these moments of introspection, the lessons of the past mingled with the visions of the future, forming a blueprint for progress that was as resilient as the ancient oaks that dotted his property. News of Edwin's expanding influence soon transcended the boundaries of his immediate community. Business magazines and national newspapers began to recount the saga of the farmer whose strategic acumen had challenged the entrenched powers of the automotive elite. Editorials praised his ability to convert skepticism into opportunity, and profiles depicted him as a visionary leader whose unconventional methods were reshaping entire industries. In one widely circulated feature, a renowned financial analyst remarked that Edwin Carver was not simply an entrepreneur but a harbinger of a new era, an era in which the rigid distinctions between blue-collar grit and white-collar finesse were gradually dissolving into a more inclusive, meritocratic paradigm. The coverage, both laudatory and analytical, spurred debates in economic forums and inspired a generation of emerging entrepreneurs who saw in Edwin a model of success forged through the alchemy of hard work and visionary planning. Despite the accolades and the broadening horizons of his business empire, Edwin remained unperturbed by the shifting tides of public opinion. His focus was steadfastly fixed on the next phase of his journey, a phase that promised to blend the tangible benefits of technological innovation with the enduring values of community and environmental stewardship. In a series of meticulously planned projects, he set about integrating renewable energy solutions into his operations, installing solar panels and wind turbines on the expansive acreage of his holdings. This move was not merely a nod to sustainability, it was a strategic decision aimed at reducing long-term operational costs and insulating his business from the fluctuations of global energy markets. The initiative, warmly received by local communities and environmental advocates alike, further cemented Edwin's reputation as a leader who was unafraid to invest in the future while honoring the lessons of the past. Amid these ambitious undertakings, the tension between Edwin's new paradigm and the residual forces of traditional authority began to manifest in subtle yet unmistakable ways. The luxury dealership, now reeling from its own internal contradictions, ramped up its efforts to lure Edwin back into its fold. Offers came in the form of exclusive service packages, personalized vehicle enhancements, and even invitations to participate in high-profile promotional events that celebrated the very image the dealership had once meticulously cultivated. However, each proposal was met with Edwin's quiet but resolute dismissal. In his measured responses, there was no trace of arrogance, only a firm conviction that his path, carved out through perseverance and innovation, was one that would not be easily redirected by those clinging to obsolete models of success. His rejection of these overtures was a clear message to his former detractors: the power of true progress was not to be negotiated with petty concessions or recycled strategies, but to be earned through continuous reinvention and a steadfast commitment to one's core values. In the days that followed, as Edwin's enterprise continued to expand and attract new partnerships, the tension between him and the dealership reached a crescendo. Behind closed doors, the executives of the dealership convened in urgent meetings, their faces etched with concern as they tried to devise a counter-strategy that would reclaim a semblance of control over a market that was rapidly evolving beyond their grasp. The once revered halls of the dealership were now battlegrounds of ideas, where the old guard clashed with emerging voices that recognized the inevitability of change. Yet, despite their best efforts, the dealership's initiatives remained little more than superficial adjustments, a series of cosmetic tweaks that failed to address the fundamental shift that Edwin's success had catalyzed. For Edwin, these internal struggles of his former adversaries were but a distant echo of a past that had long been eclipsed by the broader vision he now pursued. his attention was devoted to nurturing the networks that had proven so instrumental in safeguarding his independence and propelling his enterprise forward. Regular strategy sessions, conducted in the unpretentious surroundings of community centers and repurposed barns, evolved into vibrant forums where ideas were exchanged freely and tested against the rigors of practical reality. In these meetings, the lines between mentor and protege, between industry veteran and fledgling innovator, blurred into a seamless tapestry of collective ambition and shared purpose. The collaborative spirit that Edwin fostered was infectious, igniting a spark of possibility in every participant and slowly but surely rewriting the narrative of what it meant to succeed in a world that had long been divided by class and convention. As the summer matured and the days grew longer, the transformative power of Edwin's journey became undeniable. His steadfast resolve had not only redefined the trajectory of his own enterprise but had also cast a long, inspiring shadow over the entire region. In the fields where the labor of countless hands had once been undervalued and dismissed, a new order was emerging, one that celebrated ingenuity, embraced change, and recognized that the true measure of success was found in the strength of one's character and the courage to defy expectation. The legacy of Edwin Carver was no longer confined to the quiet triumphs of a single transaction or the modest victories of a reformed dealership. It had grown into a beacon of hope and possibility, illuminating a path for others who dared to dream beyond the limitations imposed by tradition. In this unfolding chapter of progress, the interplay of innovation and heritage, of modern technology and time-honored values, created a dynamic mosaic that continued to captivate the imagination of all who encountered it. Edwin's journey, marked by both strategic brilliance and humble reflection, served as a living testament to the idea that true leadership is not defined by the trappings of wealth or the accolades of the elite, but by the quiet, unwavering conviction to build a future that honors the past while boldly stepping into the unknown. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, golden rays across the fields that had been both his sanctuary and his proving ground, Edwin Carver's story marched inexorably onward, a narrative of transformation, defiance, and the enduring power of a simple truth, that no matter how deep the roots of tradition, they can always be nourished by the fresh promise of innovation. In the wake of his recent triumphs, Edwin Carver's influence continued to expand, weaving an intricate tapestry that merged the timeless rhythms of rural life with the cutting-edge innovations of modern enterprise. As the early days of summer gave way to the long, sultry afternoons of midsummer, an undercurrent of tension began to simmer in the corridors of power that had once scorned him. Within the opulent walls of the luxury dealership, a bastion of old-world prestige and rigid hierarchies, whispers of discontent and mounting anxiety had grown louder. The institution, now scrambling to recapture its former allure, resorted to increasingly covert maneuvers aimed at destabilizing Edwin's burgeoning network of independent service centers and technological innovations. These clandestine efforts were designed to disrupt the carefully balanced ecosystem that Edwin had so painstakingly constructed, a system that was built on the principles of transparency, collaboration, and mutual respect. Yet, even as the dealership's executives conspired in the shadows, Edwin's days were filled with purposeful activity and deliberate planning. His mornings began with long walks across dew-kissed fields, where the rustle of cornstalks and the whisper of the wind served as gentle reminders of the values that had guided him from his earliest days as a humble farmer. In these quiet moments, Edwin's mind churned with strategies not merely to safeguard his current successes but to forge entirely new paths forward. The lessons of the past were etched deeply into his character, and he knew that true strength lay in anticipating the unforeseen and responding with calculated grace. During one particularly humid afternoon, as the sun blazed overhead and the distant hum of harvest machinery provided a constant backdrop, Edwin received troubling news from one of his regional service centers. A vital shipment of advanced diagnostics equipment, essential for maintaining the cutting-edge modifications of his premium automobile fleet, had been mysteriously delayed at a rural depot. The incident, initially dismissed by some as a logistical hiccup, soon revealed a pattern when similar delays were reported at several key nodes across his network. With the precision of a seasoned strategist, Edwin immediately set about investigating the anomalies. He summoned a trusted cadre of advisors, tech experts, logistics coordinators, and local representatives from his cooperative network. and convened an impromptu strategy session in a refurbished barn that had become his informal operations hub. The meeting, held under the dim glow of vintage industrial lamps, was a crucible of insight and determination. Edwin listened intently as each advisor recounted their observations, subtle disruptions in scheduling, inexplicable rerouting of shipments, and irregularities in the communication channels between the service centers. Far from being deterred, Edwin recognized these disruptions as deliberate acts orchestrated by those who felt threatened by the transformative changes he was bringing to the region. With measured resolve, he outlined a series of contingency plans that not only addressed the immediate logistical issues but also fortified his supply chain against future attempts at sabotage. The plan involved diversifying the list of suppliers, implementing state-of-the-art tracking systems, and even establishing secure, localized hubs that could operate autonomously should central coordination falter. The news of Edwin's decisive response quickly spread throughout his network, instilling both relief and renewed vigor among his partners. In the same breath that his rivals schemed, Edwin's independent centers began to report an uptick in efficiency, their operations humming with the collective confidence of those who had been given a second chance to prove their worth. As the independent centers thrived, the dealership's attempts to undermine Edwin's progress grew more desperate, indiscreet. Boardroom meetings shrouded in secrecy, the executives of the dealership debated further measures, ranging from public smear campaigns to behind-the-scenes lobbying with local officials, in a bid to discredit the farmers' achievements and reassert control over a market that was increasingly shifting in favor of innovation and decentralization. Unbeknownst to the dealership's conspirators, Edwin had already taken proactive steps to protect not only his own interests but also those of the community he had come to represent. Embracing the spirit of collective empowerment, he initiated a series of outreach programs designed to educate local business owners and workers about the benefits of technological integration and independent enterprise. Seminars held in rustic community centers, lively discussions in repurposed barns, and open forums at local cooperatives became the rallying points for a movement that sought to bridge the gap between rural tradition and modern ingenuity. Edwin's vision was clear: to create an ecosystem where success was measured not by adherence to outdated models, but by the capacity to adapt, innovate, and thrive in the face of adversity. As midsummer ripened into a period of sustained growth, Edwin's empire began to diversify even further. Recognizing the increasing importance of sustainable practices in a rapidly changing world, he invested heavily in renewable energy projects. Solar panels were installed across vast fields, and wind turbines began to dot the horizon like silent sentinels. Harnessing the natural forces that had long sustained the land, this bold integration of green technology not only reduced operational costs but also resonated deeply with a generation increasingly conscious of environmental stewardship. In doing so, Edwin sent a resounding message, that the pursuit of progress need not come at the expense of the earth, and that the future of industry lay in harmonizing technological innovation with the timeless rhythms of nature. Yet, as Edwin's operations expanded, so too did the intensity of the challenges he faced. The dealership, now desperate to reclaim its dwindling influence, launched a series of targeted public relations campaigns aimed at casting doubt on the reliability and integrity of his independent network. Rumors circulated through both traditional media channels and digital platforms, unsubstantiated claims that questioned the quality of the modified vehicles, insinuating that the independent service centers were little more than facades for substandard practices. In response, Edwin undertook a comprehensive initiative to document and publicly share the rigorous standards and meticulous protocols employed across his network. Detailed case studies, behind-the-scenes footage of state-of-the-art service operations, and testimonials from satisfied clients were disseminated widely, countering the negative narratives with unassailable evidence of excellence. The transparency of his approach not only neutralized the dealership's propaganda but also reinforced the trust and loyalty of his growing customer base. Amid these professional battles, Edwin continued to nurture the personal connections that had always been at the heart of his success. He made regular visits to the local communities that had supported him from his earliest days, small towns where every new idea was met with cautious optimism and where the resilience of the human spirit shone through despite years of neglect. In town halls and local markets, his presence was both a reassurance and a catalyst for change. By listening to the concerns of local artisans, shopkeepers, and young entrepreneurs, Edwin gleaned insights that further refined his strategic vision. These interactions, rich in empathy and grounded in shared experience, reminded him that true leadership was as much about uplifting others as it was about achieving personal milestones. As the summer sun began its slow descent toward autumn, the impact of Edwin's multifaceted approach became increasingly evident. The independent service centers, bolstered by improved logistics and fortified by innovative technologies, began to outpace the traditional models long held dear by the dealership. Customers who had once been seduced by the glitz of branded showrooms now valued the genuine care, technical proficiency, and transparent business practices that Edwin championed. In the bustling marketplaces of regional towns and the quiet corridors of local government offices, a new consensus was forming, one that recognized the intrinsic value of ingenuity over inherited privilege. The dealership's desperate attempts to reassert control had not only failed to stem the tide of change but had, in many cases, inadvertently accelerated it. The climax of this transformative period arrived during a high-profile regional conference on sustainable development and technological innovation. Edwin, now widely regarded as a thought leader in the integration of rural enterprise with modern technology, was invited to deliver a keynote address. The event, held in a state-of-the-art convention center that juxtaposed sleek modernity with the natural beauty of the surrounding countryside, drew a diverse audience of policymakers, industry veterans, and emerging entrepreneurs. In a speech that was both measured and impassioned, Edwin recounted the evolution of his journey, from the early days of dusty fields and worn-out pickup trucks to the establishment of a thriving, technology-driven enterprise that had redefined the very nature of success. His words, imbued with the wisdom of years spent in the crucible of hardship and triumph, resonated deeply with an audience hungry for authentic narratives of resilience and innovation. The keynote address marked a turning point not only for Edwin's personal trajectory but also for the broader regional landscape. In the days and weeks that followed, his ideas found fertile ground in policy discussions and business forums. Local governments began to explore partnerships with independent innovators, inspired by the tangible benefits of a decentralized, community-driven approach. New investment initiatives were launched to support green technologies, and a palpable sense of optimism permeated communities that had long been mired in the shadows of traditional power structures. For Edwin, the conference was more than a public relations milestone, it was a validation of the principles that had guided his every decision. A reaffirmation that the collision of tradition and innovation could yield a future defined by equity, sustainability, and collective progress. Yet, even as accolades and endorsements flowed in, Edwin remained vigilant. He knew that the forces arrayed against him, the entrenched interests that clung to outdated notions of authority, were not easily dislodged. The dealership, though increasingly sidelined, had not entirely abandoned its schemes. In quiet corners of the corporate world, a small cadre of loyalists continued to plot their resurgence, studying every move Edwin made with a mix of envy and reluctant admiration. But for Edwin, these residual challenges were mere echoes of a past that had long been transcended by the spirit of innovation and community empowerment. With the turning of the seasons and the promise of autumn on the horizon, Edwin Carver's journey pressed forward with renewed vigor. His vision of a future where the merits of hard work, technological advancement, and community collaboration could coexist harmoniously was no longer a distant dream. It had become an attainable reality, one that was steadily reshaping the contours of an industry and inspiring a generation to challenge the status quo. In every field tilled, every service center established, and every partnership forged, the legacy of a humble farmer who dared to dream beyond the confines of tradition continued to thrive, a beacon of hope and progress in an ever-changing world. As autumn's golden light deepened into a rich, ember glow across the countryside, Edwin Carver's legacy began to take on a mythic quality. His one small operation had grown into a sprawling enterprise that now resonated far beyond the boundaries of agriculture and technology. In the wake of his steadfast defense against the underhanded tactics of the luxury dealership, Edwin had successfully built a network that thrived on innovation, independence, and community trust. Yet, as the crisp air of fall brought with it the promise of harvest and renewal, it also heralded a new phase of challenges, ones that would test not only the resilience of his enterprise but the very principles that had guided his journey from humble beginnings to a position of formidable influence. In the early days of October, as leaves turned brilliant shades of crimson and gold, tensions within the corporate corridors of the dealership reached a fever pitch. The once proud institution, now scrambling to salvage its diminishing relevance, initiated a series of aggressive marketing campaigns and strategic partnerships designed to reassert its dominance in the luxury market. Rumors circulated that high-level executives were planning a grand rebranding effort, one that would see the dealership embracing a blend of traditional opulence with modern technological allure. Their aim was to lure back clients who had grown wary of the old guard's rigid practices, using slick advertisements and celebrity endorsements to mask the underlying desperation. However, these maneuvers, rather than regaining lost ground, only further highlighted the disconnect between superficial glitter and genuine innovation. Meanwhile, Edwin, ever the vigilant strategist, had been quietly expanding his influence in realms that stretched well beyond the agricultural markets. He had begun to forge alliances with technology startups, environmental groups, and even local government agencies that were eager to pioneer sustainable practices. In a series of well-attended regional forums, he presented detailed blueprints for a new model of rural enterprise, one that blended renewable energy, smart logistics, and digital connectivity into a cohesive framework designed to uplift entire communities. His proposals were backed by rigorous data and a wealth of practical experience. Every statistic and every case study bore the unmistakable signature of a man who had witnessed both the harsh realities of rural life and the transformative power of modern technology. During a particularly memorable forum held in a refurbished community center on the outskirts of town, Edwin outlined his vision for a network of smart farms that would operate as interconnected hubs of production, innovation, and education. The audience, a mix of local farmers, tech entrepreneurs, and civic leaders, listened intently as he detailed plans to integrate precision agriculture with advanced renewable energy solutions. His words, delivered in a calm and measured tone, painted a picture of a future where technology was harnessed not to replace tradition but to enhance it, a future in which the wisdom of the land was fused with the power of digital innovation. The response was overwhelming. Inspired by his clarity of purpose and the tangible benefits outlined in his proposals, many attendees vowed to adopt his model, setting in motion a wave of transformation that rippled across the region. Yet, even as Edwin's influence spread like the vibrant colors of autumn foliage, the luxury dealership's relentless countermeasures began to escalate. In a series of covert operations that spanned several weeks, the dealership's loyalists attempted to sabotage Edwin's efforts by targeting the very backbone of his new initiatives. Anonymous tips were sent to local authorities regarding supposed irregularities in the permits for his renewable energy installations, and social media campaigns were launched to question the safety and reliability of the advanced technologies he championed. For a brief period, the air was thick with uncertainty as skeptics, fueled by the dealership's well-funded propaganda, began to voice concerns over the rapid pace of change and the potential risks of adopting untested innovations. Undeterred by these setbacks, Edwin responded with a level of transparency and decisiveness that only deepened the trust his partners and community had placed in him. He organized a series of public demonstrations at one of his flagship smart farms, a sprawling site that served as both a production facility and an educational center. On a crisp November morning, as frost delicately traced patterns along the edges of solar panels and wind turbines, Edwin welcomed a throng of local residents, journalists, and industry experts. In a series of meticulously orchestrated demonstrations, he showcased the operational integrity of his integrated systems. Live data streams projected real-time analytics of energy generation, crop yields, and logistic efficiency, while experts on hand provided detailed explanations of every component in the system. The event was not only a rebuttal to the dealership's disparaging claims but also a celebration of community empowerment and technological progress. The public display had a profound effect. Local newspapers and digital media outlets carried headlines praising the smart farm revolution, and Edwin's network of independent service centers recorded a surge in requests for consultations and partnerships. The transparent and data-driven approach he adopted served as an unassailable testament to the robustness of his methods, and slowly, the tide of public opinion began to shift irrevocably in his favor. Community support solidified into concrete action. Local investors and civic bodies pledged additional funding to expand his initiatives, while several neighboring counties expressed keen interest in replicating his model to rejuvenate their own rural economies. As winter's chill finally set in, Edwin took a moment to reflect on the arduous path he had traversed, a journey marked by scorn, setbacks, and the slow but steady vindication of hard-won wisdom. In the quiet solitude of his expansive office, which overlooked both his thriving fields and the distant silhouette of a once dominant dealership now struggling to adapt, he pondered the future. His mind wandered to the countless individuals who had seen him as an anomaly, a simple farmer daring to dream. In a world ruled by polished facades and superficial accolades, their skepticism had transformed, almost imperceptibly at first, into a grudging respect, and eventually into wholehearted admiration. Yet, Edwin remained aware that the struggle was far from over, the remnants of entrenched power still lingered, and the dealership's next moves, shrouded in both strategy and desperation, could potentially spark a renewed conflict. Even so, his resolve did not waver. Instead, Edwin focused on nurturing the new ecosystem he had created, a vibrant network of innovators, local leaders, and independent service providers committed to reimagining the possibilities of rural enterprise. His plans for the coming months included a series of groundbreaking projects, the establishment of a regional innovation hub that would serve as a collaborative workspace for young entrepreneurs, a scholarship program aimed at training local youth in the latest agricultural and technological practices, and a comprehensive digital platform that would integrate supply chain data, real-time market analytics, and customer feedback into a unified interface accessible to all stakeholders. In a symbolic gesture that captured the spirit of his journey, Edwin decided to host a grand festival on his estate, one that would celebrate not only the harvest but also the spirit of transformation that had become his trademark. Invitations were extended far and wide, to local dignitaries, to representatives of technology firms, to activists championing sustainability, and even to former skeptics from the dealership who had come to see firsthand the fruits of his labor. The festival was a resplendent blend of tradition and modernity. Rustic farm stands shared space with interactive digital exhibits, folk music mingled with presentations on renewable energy, and stories of grassroots resilience were broadcast alongside live feeds of cutting-edge technological demonstrations. As the festival unfolded beneath a twilight sky dusted with stars, Edwin walked among his guests with a quiet, measured pride. The air buzzed with conversations that spanned subjects as diverse as innovative farming techniques, economic empowerment, and the art of subverting outdated power structures. In every exchange, in every shared laugh and nod of understanding, there was a tacit recognition of the journey that had brought them all together, a journey that began in a modest field and had grown into a movement poised to redefine the future of rural enterprise. For Edwin Carver, the festival was both a culmination and a new beginning. It encapsulated the transformative power of perseverance, the strength found in unity, and the inexorable march of progress that refused to be stalled by those clinging to the past. As the night deepened and the celebration continued with an undercurrent of hopeful determination, it became clear that the legacy of a humble farmer had transcended the boundaries of mere commerce. It had sparked a revolution of ideas, a dynamic, ever-evolving narrative of change that would continue to challenge, inspire, and transform for generations to come. As winter's icy breath began to recede and the promise of a tentative spring hovered on the horizon, Edwin Carver found himself confronting a challenge that threatened to upend the carefully constructed equilibrium of his expansive enterprise. In the early days of the new season, when frost still clung stubbornly to the edges of his solar arrays and the first hints of thaw began to permeate the once crisp air, a series of unexpected complications emerged from the shadows of both nature and human ambition. It was a time when the interplay of technology, tradition, and corporate maneuvering reached a fevered pitch, demanding every ounce of the farmer-turned-innovator's wisdom and resolve. In the weeks that followed the resounding success of his public demonstrations and the grand festival celebrating the fusion of old-world agriculture with modern ingenuity, unsettling reports began to filter through Edwin's network. Remote service centers, long hailed as paragons of efficiency and independence, reported intermittent glitches in their high-tech monitoring systems. At first, these anomalies were dismissed as minor technical hiccups, an unfortunate byproduct of rapid expansion and the teething problems of integrating new software with legacy hardware. However, As similar issues began to manifest simultaneously across multiple sites, it became evident that the disruptions were not random malfunctions but rather coordinated acts of interference. Edwin, ever the vigilant strategist, wasted no time in assembling his trusted circle of advisors, in the hushed ambience of his state-of-the-art operations hub, a repurposed barn that now served as the nerve center for his sprawling enterprise. He convened an emergency session. Maps and digital schematics of his network lit up large screens along the barn's rough-hewn walls. While data streams from every independent center scrolled relentlessly, the assembled team, comprised of technology specialists, logistics coordinators, and regional managers, analyzed the patterns with a collective intensity that spoke of years spent anticipating and outmaneuvering adversity. It soon became clear that the malfunctions were not the work of random technical failure but the calculated result of external tampering. The sophisticated nature of the disruptions pointed to a deliberate attempt to cripple his operations at a time when his influence was beginning to unsettle established powers. All evidence pointed back to the luxury dealership, the very institution that had once dismissed him with scorn and whose executives, in their desperation, had resorted to covert strategies in a bid to reassert control. The dealership's agents had evidently infiltrated parts of the supply chain, leveraging outdated relationships and underhanded tactics to sow chaos in Edwin's system. Even as the magnitude of the threat crystallized, Edwin's demeanor remained unruffled, drawing upon decades of experience in the unpredictable cycles of both nature and commerce. He recognized that every storm, whether meteorological or corporate, carried within it the seeds of renewal and opportunity. With a measured calm that had become his trademark, he initiated a multi-pronged response. First, he ordered an immediate audit of all independent service centers, deploying teams to physically inspect and recalibrate the critical components that govern the monitoring and communication systems. This on-the-ground verification was paired with an expedited rollout of enhanced encryption protocols designed to shield his data flows from further incursions. Simultaneously, Edwin embarked on a series of confidential consultations with high-ranking officials from regional cybersecurity firms and government agencies known for their expertise in thwarting industrial sabotage. In a series of discreet meetings held in secure locations far removed from prying eyes, he laid bare the evidence of tampering and outlined the potential ramifications, not only for his own enterprise but for the broader network of rural innovators whose successes were beginning to challenge long-standing monopolies. His impassioned appeals, delivered with the quiet authority of a man who had battled countless setbacks, resonated deeply with those present. A coalition of experts and sympathetic public servants gradually coalesced around his cause, pledging to launch a formal investigation into the dealership's suspected misconduct. Amid the unfolding crisis, Edwin also recognized that public perception was as critical a battleground as the technical realm. Rumors, once seeded by his adversaries to cast doubt on the reliability of his network, now threatened to erode the hard-won trust of customers and partners. With the same transparency that had characterized his previous public demonstrations, he scheduled a series of live, interactive sessions at several of his flagship smart farms. These sessions, broadcast across local media and digital platforms, allowed Edwin and his team to showcase the integrity of their systems in real time. Engineers explained the technical safeguards in place, while live feeds displayed uninterrupted performance metrics from unaffected centers. The deliberate openness served not only to debunk the dealership's propaganda but also to galvanize community support, reinforcing the notion that genuine innovation could withstand even the most determined attempts at sabotage. During one particularly charged session, as twilight descended over a vast field dotted with gleaming wind turbines and solar panels, Edwin's calm yet resolute voice addressed the gathering of local entrepreneurs, media representatives, and government officials. He recounted the journey that had brought him from the dusty lanes of his childhood farm to the helm of a multifaceted enterprise. In his measured tones, he spoke of the countless challenges that had tested his resolve, from the initial ridicule in a high-end dealership to the present moment, where unseen forces sought to undermine the progress of an entire community. His narrative was not one of vengeance but of unwavering commitment to a future where technology and tradition coexisted in harmony. Listeners were captivated by his ability to transform adversity into a rallying cry for collective action. While the public face of the crisis was being managed with deft skill, Edwin also navigated the labyrinth of corporate espionage and sabotage with the precision of a seasoned tactician. He authorized a covert internal investigation, enlisting the services of an independent auditing firm renowned for its discretion and efficacy. Over the ensuing weeks, a detailed report emerged, implicating several individuals with documented links to the dealership's covert operations. The findings were then discreetly relayed to regional law enforcement and regulatory bodies, setting in motion a chain of legal inquiries that threatened to expose the dealership's illicit maneuvers to public scrutiny. The revelation of these underhanded tactics not only discredited the dealership in the eyes of many but also served as a powerful vindication of Edwin's unwavering commitment to integrity and innovation. As spring finally asserted its dominion over the land, melting away the last vestiges of winter's chill, the crisis that had once loomed ominously began to subside. The independent service centers, fortified by new security measures and invigorated by the public's renewed confidence, resumed operations with an efficiency that surpassed their previous performance. Meanwhile, the legal and regulatory proceedings gradually unspooled, with several high-ranking executives from the dealership facing intense scrutiny for their role in the sabotage. In boardrooms far removed from the rustic charm of Edwin's domain, a palpable sense of disquiet began to replace the hubris that had once characterized the dealership's leadership. Throughout this tumultuous period, Edwin remained a steadfast beacon of pragmatic optimism. In the quiet moments between crisis management and strategic planning, he often retreated to the familiar solace of his fields, walking along furrowed rows of budding crops and beneath skies that promised renewal. He reflected on the cyclical nature of life, a tapestry woven with threads of hardship, resilience, and eventual triumph. It was in these moments of quiet introspection that he reaffirmed his belief that every challenge, no matter how daunting, carried within it the potential to sow the seeds of a brighter future. In the wake of the crisis, as the first blush of summer painted the horizon with vibrant hues of possibility, Edwin Carver's legacy took on an even more profound dimension. The turmoil had not only fortified his enterprise against external threats but had also galvanized a movement among rural innovators and independent entrepreneurs. His actions had demonstrated that success was not the exclusive domain of those born into privilege or confined to the sterile corridors of high finance. It was a mosaic of relentless effort, strategic foresight, and the courage to stand firm in one's convictions. As the investigation into the dealership sabotage gained momentum and public opinion swung decidedly in favor of transparent, community-driven enterprise, Edwin's influence blossomed further. Invitations poured in from academic institutions, industry conferences, and civic organizations eager to learn from the man whose journey had transcended the traditional boundaries of commerce. His story, now interwoven with themes of resilience, ethical leadership, and the transformative power of technology, became a rallying cry for a new generation of innovators determined to forge their own paths in a rapidly evolving world. In one particularly memorable symposium held at a prominent regional university, Edwin delivered an address that encapsulated the essence of his journey. Against a backdrop of thoughtful nods and earnest applause from an audience comprising future entrepreneurs, policymakers, and scholars, he recounted the saga of his humble beginnings, the trials he had faced at the hands of entrenched corporate powers, and the ultimate triumph of integrity over deceit. His words, measured yet imbued with an unyielding spirit, resonated deeply with all who listened, reaffirming the timeless lesson that true progress is built not on the fragile foundations of exclusion but on the robust pillars of collaboration, transparency, and relentless perseverance. Even as the legal ramifications for the dealership's nefarious actions began to take shape, with public hearings and regulatory reforms promising to reshape the competitive landscape, Edwin's focus remained resolutely on the future. He channeled the lessons of recent months into an ambitious blueprint for the next phase of his enterprise. This new chapter would see the integration of advanced predictive analytics into his supply chain, a further expansion of his renewable energy initiatives, and the launch of a digital platform designed to empower small-scale producers with real-time market intelligence. In essence, he sought not only to fortify his own operations but also to democratize the tools of innovation, ensuring that the benefits of technological advancement were accessible to all who dared to dream of a better tomorrow. The culmination of these efforts was set to be unveiled at a grand regional summit on sustainable development and technological innovation, a gathering that promised to bring together leaders from diverse sectors to explore the future of rural enterprise in a rapidly globalizing economy. As preparations for the summit reached a fevered pitch, Edwin's team worked tirelessly to ensure that every detail reflected the values that had guided him from the very start: integrity, inclusiveness, and an unwavering commitment to progress. From the meticulously designed digital interface that showcased live data from his operations to the interactive exhibits that demonstrated the tangible benefits of sustainable practices, every element of the summit was a testament to the transformative power of blending tradition with technology. In the days leading up to the summit, as the renewed spirit of community empowerment permeated every corner of his enterprise, Edwin Carver found himself reflecting on the profound journey that had brought him to this pivotal moment. His life, once defined by the simple rhythms of planting and harvest, had been irrevocably transformed by a series of trials that tested not only his technical acumen but the very core of his character. And yet, through every setback and every orchestrated attempt to derail his progress, he had emerged stronger, more resolute, and more determined than ever to champion a future where innovation and tradition coexisted in a harmonious, empowering balance. As the summit finally commenced under a sky alive with the gentle glow of early evening, Edwin stepped onto the stage with the quiet confidence of a man who had not only weathered the storm but had harnessed its energy to propel him forward. In that moment, surrounded by a diverse assembly of visionaries, community leaders, and inspired youths, his voice, steady and imbued with the weight of hard-won wisdom, spoke directly to the hearts and minds of all present. He urged them to look beyond the superficial trappings of success and to recognize that the true measure of progress lay in the courage to challenge convention, the wisdom to embrace change, and the unwavering commitment to uplift not just oneself, but entire communities. In that defining instant, as the audience absorbed every word, Edwin Carver's legacy was sealed not as a solitary tale of individual triumph but as a vibrant, ongoing narrative of collective empowerment, a narrative destined to reshape the future of rural enterprise and inspire generations to come. And so, as the summit's proceedings unfolded and the first signs of a new dawn illuminated the horizon, the humble farmer who had risen to become an icon of innovation and resilience continued his march toward a future defined by hope, ingenuity, and an enduring belief that every challenge could, indeed, be transformed into an opportunity for lasting progress. In the wake of the Grand Regional Summit, a momentous event that had crystallized Edwin Carver's vision for a future in which sustainable innovation and time-honored tradition intertwined seamlessly, the momentum of change surged forward with renewed intensity. The summit had not only served as a powerful platform for showcasing the ingenuity of Edwin's integrated enterprise but had also ignited a spirit of collaboration among leaders and communities far beyond his immediate sphere. As the echo of his keynote address reverberated through boardrooms, rural markets, and digital forums alike, Edwin found himself at the threshold of a transformative era, one in which his once modest beginnings as a humble farmer were now a symbol of resistance against outdated hierarchies and a beacon for progress. In the days that followed, as the early light of dawn illuminated fields now bustling with activity and hope, Edwin devoted himself to the next phase of his ambitious agenda. His vision had grown to encompass not only the optimization of his own operations but also the establishment of a comprehensive support network for small-scale producers across the region. With the unwavering conviction that true advancement could only be achieved through collective empowerment, he set out to build a digital platform, a centralized hub that would integrate real-time supply chain data, advanced market analytics, and open communication channels for local entrepreneurs. This platform, designed to democratize access to critical resources, was conceived as a tool to level the playing field, ensuring that even those long sidelined by traditional power structures could participate fully in the emerging ecosystem of rural innovation. Meanwhile, the luxury dealership, once the epicenter of scornful judgment and the architect of covert schemes, found itself grappling with an irreversible decline in influence, as public hearings and regulatory reforms steadily dismantled the remnants of its archaic practices. The dealership's executives became increasingly entangled in a labyrinth of legal scrutiny and internal discord. Whispers of resignations, restructuring, and even the possibility of a merger with more forward-thinking Entities began to circulate within the once impenetrable walls of the establishment. The institution's desperate attempts to recast itself as a modern purveyor of luxury were met with skepticism by a public that had grown accustomed to Edwin's transparent, community-centered approach. In stark contrast, Edwin's initiatives resonated deeply with an electorate that had long chafed under the weight of corporate elitism and exclusivity. Back on his sprawling estate, where the juxtaposition of cutting-edge technology in verdant fields epitomized the fusion of progress and heritage, Edwin convened a series of strategic sessions with his core team. The agenda was as ambitious as it was clear: expand the digital platform to serve as a nationwide resource, forge new alliances with technology innovators and environmental advocates, and launch a mentorship program designed to equip young entrepreneurs with the skills necessary to navigate the challenges of modern agribusiness. Each meeting, held in renovated barns turned state-of-the-art conference rooms and in local community centers, was a testament to the power of grassroots collaboration. Ideas flowed freely as seasoned experts and fresh voices alike contributed perspectives that bridged generations and disciplines, reinforcing the notion that innovation was most potent when it sprang from the collective will of a community united by a common purpose. As preparations for the digital platform moved from concept to implementation, Edwin also embarked on a series of high-profile visits to regions that had yet to experience the transformative impact of his initiatives. In one such journey, he traveled to a neighboring county where decades of economic stagnation had left small farms struggling to survive amidst fierce competition from industrial agribusinesses. There, he held a town hall meeting in a modest community hall, its walls adorned with local memorabilia and the faded photographs of families who had tilled the land for generations. With characteristic calm and clarity, Edwin presented his vision for a more inclusive future, one where access to modern technology and market insights could help these communities break free from the cycle of poverty and marginalization. His message was simple yet profound: success was not the preserve of those born into privilege, but a right for all who dared to work with integrity and foresight. The impact of these outreach efforts was palpable. Local farmers, initially skeptical of a man whose achievements had seemed so distant from their daily struggles, began to see in Edwin a kindred spirit, a mentor who had weathered the same storms and emerged with practical solutions that could be adapted to their unique challenges. As word spread of his accessible leadership and his willingness to share both knowledge and resources, a grassroots movement emerged. This movement, fueled by renewed hope and an unwavering belief in the transformative power of collective effort, gradually began to reshape the regional economic landscape. Cooperative ventures were established, innovative farming techniques were disseminated, and a series of pilot projects, ranging from community-supported agriculture to renewable energy cooperatives, took root in even the most remote corners of the countryside. Amid these promising developments, Edwin remained acutely aware of the persistent threats posed by those who had once sought to undermine him. The luxury dealership, though now diminished in power, had not entirely abandoned its ambitions. Its remaining loyalists sought to exploit any fissure in Edwin's expanding network, launching sporadic campaigns aimed at discrediting the digital platform and casting doubt on the feasibility of decentralized agribusiness models. Yet, with every challenge, Edwin's resolve grew stronger. Drawing on the deep well of experience honed over years of navigating adversity, he doubled down on his commitment to transparency and community engagement. Public updates, detailed performance reports, and interactive forums were instituted to keep stakeholders informed and confident in the system's integrity. In every response to adversity, he demonstrated that the strength of his enterprise lay not in the absence of conflict, but in the ability to adapt and persevere in the face of it. In parallel with these internal initiatives, Edwin also began to cultivate a broader cultural shift, recognizing that true transformation required a reimagining of societal values as much as a reconfiguration of economic structures. He spearheaded a series of cultural programs aimed at celebrating the rich heritage of rural life while embracing the promise of modernity. Art festivals, historical exhibitions, and storytelling events were organized to document and honor the journeys of those who had labored on the land for generations. These cultural endeavors, infused with the themes of resilience and renewal, resonated with audiences far and wide, helping to shift public perceptions about what it meant to be both a custodian of tradition and an agent of change. The crescendo of these efforts came during a landmark event, the national launch of the digital platform, held in a modern conference center that overlooked vast expanses of reimagined farmland. The event brought together policymakers, industry leaders, technology innovators, and representatives from grassroots organizations. Amid an atmosphere of palpable excitement and shared purpose, Edwin unveiled the platform through a live demonstration that seamlessly integrated real-time market data, predictive analytics, and interactive communication channels. The presentation was more than a technical showcase, it was a declaration of a new era in which rural communities would no longer be left at the margins of economic progress. It was an invitation to every small-scale producer, every aspiring entrepreneur, and every community leader to join a movement that promised not only economic revitalization but also a redefinition of success itself. As applause filled the room and the vision of a more inclusive, technologically empowered future took hold, Edwin Carver's journey seemed poised on the brink of its most transformative chapter yet. His life, a tapestry woven from the threads of struggle, innovation, and indomitable spirit, had transcended the confines of any single narrative. It had become a living testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of ethical leadership, and the enduring belief that when communities unite around a shared vision, no force, no matter how entrenched or formidable, can stifle the light of progress. In the waning days of a transformative year, as the early light of a new dawn illuminated fields that had been meticulously reimagined under Edwin Carver's visionary leadership, the final chapter of his odyssey began to crystallize, a chapter that would not only cement his legacy but also signal the dawn of a revolution poised to ripple across every facet of rural enterprise. The once simple farmer, whose journey from dusty fields to the helm of a multifaceted, community-driven empire had defied every expectation, now stood at the apex of an era defined by collaboration, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of progress. In a grand culmination of his endeavors, Edwin organized a national convocation that gathered together the disparate threads of his network: innovators, small-scale producers, technology experts, policymakers, and community leaders from every corner of the region. The event, held in a sprawling conference center that itself was a marvel of modern design juxtaposed against panoramic views of rewilded farmlands, was not merely an exhibition of technological prowess or an economic summit. It was a celebration of the human spirit, a testament to the enduring power of collective effort and the conviction that true change is forged when communities dare to challenge the status quo. As delegates from diverse backgrounds filled the vast hall, their faces alight with hope and curiosity, Edwin took the stage with the calm assurance of a man who had weathered countless storms and emerged ever more resolute. His address was measured, yet impassioned, weaving together threads of his own narrative with the broader tapestry of a movement that had transcended the limitations of outdated hierarchies. In his eloquent discourse, he recounted the arduous battles fought against entrenched corporate interests, the clandestine schemes, the sabotage, the relentless propaganda that had sought to diminish his vision. Yet, in every setback, he had discovered an opportunity. In every act of subterfuge, he had unearthed a deeper commitment to transparency and integrity. Edwin's words resonated deeply, reverberating across the room as he spoke of the metamorphosis that had redefined not only his own life but the very fabric of rural enterprise. He reminded the assembly that the digital platform he had so painstakingly developed was more than a repository of data and analytics. It was a living, breathing network of hope, innovation, and shared destiny. It symbolized a new era in which farmers and entrepreneurs alike could access real-time market intelligence, harness predictive analytics to make informed decisions, and, above all, engage in open, unmediated dialogue with one another. This platform was the cornerstone of a future where prosperity was not a privilege of the few but the birthright of every community member willing to invest in the collective good. Throughout the day, workshops and breakout sessions unfolded in parallel, hands-on demonstrations of advanced agritech solutions, discussions on sustainable renewable energy practices, and forums dedicated to refining logistical networks that bridged urban and rural divides. In each session, Edwin's influence was unmistakable. He moved fluidly among groups, listening intently to the concerns of a young startup founder from a remote county, offering sagacious counsel to a seasoned cooperative leader, and engaging in spirited debates with technologists whose ideas were as fresh as the morning dew on newly planted crops. His humility remained ever present, a quality that had endeared him to countless individuals. For he had never lost sight of his origins even as his empire expanded beyond the horizons of imagination. In a moment of quiet reflection during a brief intermission, Edwin recalled the early days of his journey, the skepticism he had faced when he first arrived at that glittering luxury dealership in his battered pickup, the dismissive glances, and the whispered snickers that had haunted him. It was that very derision that had spurred him on, fueling his determination to prove that true worth was not measured by outward appearances or social status but by the substance of one's vision and the fortitude to pursue it relentlessly. Today, as he surveyed the vibrant energy of the convocation, he saw in every participant the embodiment of that spirit, an indomitable will to break free from the constraints of conventional wisdom and forge a new paradigm grounded in equity, sustainability, and mutual respect. As the summit advanced into its closing hours, a series of symbolic gestures underscored the transformation that had taken place. Local farmers, once relegated to the margins of a system that favored industrial behemoths, stepped forward to share their success stories, narratives of enhanced crop yields achieved through precision agriculture, of small businesses revitalized by access to state-of-the-art market data, and of communities re-energized by investments in renewable energy that promised a cleaner, more secure future. These stories, told in a mix of heartfelt testimonials and meticulously prepared case studies, painted a picture of a revolution in progress, one that had begun at the grassroots level and was now poised to reshape the national conversation on economic empowerment. Amid the accolades and the palpable sense of hope, the luxury dealership, its former grandeur now reduced to a cautionary tale of hubris, faded further into the background of a rapidly evolving landscape. Its attempts to cling to an antiquated model of exclusivity and control were now seen for what they were, relics of a bygone era that had no place in a world where information, innovation, and inclusivity reigned supreme. Legal proceedings and regulatory reforms, spurred by Edwin's earlier revelations, had ushered in sweeping changes that promised to level the playing field for all players in the market. The dealership's remaining loyalists, once so confident in their ability to dictate terms, now found themselves grappling with the realities of a market that rewarded transparency and adaptive thinking. In a poignant final segment of the convocation, Edwin unveiled the next phase of his vision, a comprehensive mentorship and training initiative aimed at nurturing the next generation of rural innovators. The program, designed to offer scholarships, technical training, and direct access to cutting-edge technologies, was a clarion call to every aspiring entrepreneur and farmer who had ever felt marginalized by an indifferent system. It was an embodiment of Edwin's lifelong belief that the true measure of success was not in solitary achievement, but in the ability to uplift others and pave the way for a more inclusive future. As the announcement was met with a standing ovation, it became clear that Edwin's impact was no longer confined to the boundaries of his own enterprise. It was a catalyst for a nationwide movement, a beacon for all those who dared to dream beyond the limitations imposed by tradition. As the day drew to a close and the final notes of an inspiring musical performance echoed under a starlit sky, Edwin Carver stood once more at the precipice of a new dawn. In that transcendent moment, he reflected on the journey that had brought him from the humble furrows of his ancestral fields to the forefront of a revolution that was rewriting the rules of commerce, community, and sustainable development. His eyes, weathered yet bright with the light of hard-won wisdom, scanned the crowd of faces, each one a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of ethical leadership, and the unyielding belief that when communities unite around a shared vision, no force can extinguish the flame of progress. In the silent aftermath of that grand convocation, as participants slowly dispersed into the cool night air with hearts buoyed by a renewed sense of purpose, Edwin's legacy was unequivocally affirmed. His life, a mosaic of trials and triumphs, had redefined the very notion of success, not as an isolated achievement but as an enduring commitment to innovation, inclusiveness, and the collective betterment of society. As the first light of a new day began to creep over the horizon, promising another cycle of growth and renewal, it was clear that the humble farmer who had once dared to challenge a world built on preconceptions had become an enduring symbol of hope. His journey had not only transformed an industry but had ignited a movement destined to inspire generations to come, a movement where the synthesis of tradition and technology would forever be celebrated as the true engine of progress.